Now I go disc golfing with AA people and everything. There's these play some poker. There's circles that you get friendships, and that's like the only people I socialize with are like recovering addicts and stuff.
All right, so we're rolling. So my name is Rod Graham, Dr. Rod Graham, and I have a channel called Conversations and Perspectives. It's more of a public education channel, and right now I'm working on this series called Social Isolation and Loneliness. And just through some YouTube searches, I found this very interesting YouTuber who has a growing channel. His name is Sober James, and obviously from the YouTube channel title, you know what the channel is about. He talks about recovery, tips in recovery. Actually, I'll let you describe the channel, but I found him, and he's very, very entertaining and charismatic and informative, which I think is important for this. So I said, well, all right, there's such a relationship between social isolation and addiction, and he would be a great person to talk to. So that's my end.
Thank you, Rod. I enjoy your channel too. I watched a couple of your videos. You have some very interesting, introspective, just on loneliness, isolation, social platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, and all that stuff. So I appreciate you reaching out to me and connecting. My name's James. I'm a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic. January 18th of this year was 4 years sober for me. So January 18th, 2016 is my sobriety date. I drank and used, almost died, jails, institutions, and death for 20 years. And I post weekly on my channel, Sober James, on YouTube. It's a little over a year old. I'm about to hit 5,000 subscribers. It's great. People are reaching out, expressing their gratitude for being able to relate and stuff. So I am just blessed to get to share my experience and help others on Sober James on YouTube. And I also do a live stream every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you ever want to drop by and do that. Like I said, I enjoy your topics of loneliness and isolation. So what do you got for me today?
All right. Well, I came up with a couple of questions, and the questions are just to order it. I mean, we'll deviate off maybe, but so it's more of a conversation. But I got some questions for, should I say Sober James? I guess I should just say James.
Yeah, just James.
So I got some questions for James, and we'll just take it from there. So if you'd like, tell the listeners your story from addiction to recovery, the highlights, I guess.
All right. I'll tell you the summary. I have about 80 videos describing everything from jails, seizures. I had a grand mal seizure. I had a car crash while driving drunk, resulted in a 2.5 month coma. That video is on my channel. But I'll tell you the gist of it. Ever since I was 14, I've been seeking out mind-altering substances. At first, it started with stuff I could get a hold of, like rubber cement, huffing glue and stuff like that. And then once I discovered I could alter my, get high, I just sought out anything and everything. I discovered booze around the same age, and I was off and running. And it wasn't until about age of 34 when I finally discovered that following the suggestions of Alcoholics Anonymous, whether I like it or not, is what is going to save me, and that's what actually happened. So my teenage years, I drank, and I spent 5 years in high school. I struggled with relationships and fitting in high school. I was if I was hanging out with anybody, they did drugs and drank, period. If I was going to any party, I was drinking or using drugs. It affected my life throughout my 20s. I was in the Navy from 2002 to 2006. I was still at a younger age like that in the beginning. There were consequences like DUIs and fights, bar fights and street fights and stuff like that. I've always been in trouble with the law. I have videos about that and how that relates to addiction as well, because even before I discovered drugs and alcohol, I looking back, I realized I had these personality traits that I call it the ism in alcoholism. So you get rid of the alcohol, you still have the ism. So throughout my 20s, I struggled even more, got in a very serious car crash and a coma when I was 27 in 2007. I've had various run-ins with the law involving everything from trespassing, assault, DUIs, stuff like that. Anything and everything was drinking. It's a progressive illness. So in the very end, in the end, 29 through 34, I had just withdrew to my own self. I wouldn't hang out with anybody that wouldn't drink. I was ashamed. I was ashamed of how much I would drink, and I was pretty much bottom of the social barrel. So like, I would drink alone, and I would isolate, and I would, play video games and stuff. But this topic is very interesting to me because I often tell people as a joke, I will tell people, oh, I was a social drinker. I drank alone, but I was on Facebook all the time when I was drunk. And I tell people that because it's absolutely true. I would be alone, and in my disease of alcoholism, I would be isolating because I'm a social outcast at this point. In the later stages of alcoholism, you're a social outcast. The law, you're in trouble with the law. You don't fit in at work. You don't fit in social circles. There's different types of alcoholics, but I was of the type that I would drink fast and hard and heavy until I would either wind up passed out in jail or the hospital. So I didn't fit in many social groups. So late 20s and early 30s, I was drinking alone, isolating in my apartment at the time, and jobs ran out, girlfriends I couldn't keep or whatever, and then finally became homeless because it took precedent over everything. So I ran out of friends, obviously I ran out of family, and I made my way down the East Coast, tried to utilize my military benefits to go to college, wound up ruining it by drinking, became homeless down in Florida, and then finally my dad said, if you're serious about getting sober, come live with me. I won't charge you rent, and I'll pay for food while you get yourself out of debt, back on your feet, and healthy. Ended up going to my third rehab at this point. I've been to rehabs from here to California. I've been to 3 rehabs.
Wait, just to say something. This is pretty. To me, it seems like there are degrees, but you're on the far end of the addiction with the homelessness and. But looking at you, I would say if you told me that, oh, I'm an accountant at Bank of America, you look very clean, I'm trying to say. It doesn't seem as if the drugs have ravaged you like it would other people.
I wish I could show you pictures. I wish I could throw pictures up. But I do have my videos do have pictures of like me. I've been 70 pounds lighter than this after my coma. I look like a skeleton straight up. There were times where my skin was gray because I wasn't getting any nutrients. I was just basically, my liver was probably struggling, borderline jaundice, liver problems. I was like a gray color. I didn't look as healthy at all because I wouldn't eat. I would just drink and use. I'm a cross-addicted multi-substance, but my drug of choice was alcohol. But I appreciate it. These days I am healthier mentally and physically. I call it a normal human being. Normal human beings to me don't seek out drugs and alcohol 24/7 of their lives. So although I'm not staying like in the gym like I should or anybody should, I'm definitely more healthy now than I was then. So I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. But if you were to compare, there's just I have videos on my channel that I don't have many pictures because it's not like you carry around a camera when you're on Skid Row. When you're on Skid Row, you don't document it and post it.
No time for selfies at that point. Yeah.
But,
okay. Well, I'm sorry. You're telling me your father decided to help you out. Yeah.
Yeah, and after that, so long story short, lived at his house. He got me back on my feet, out of debt. I worked at a department store for $8.25 an hour, started there, and then I started working at a factory, and then I actually got a 2-year IT degree, and I started getting back on my feet. I had a couple relapses. They do say relapse can be a part of recovery, but don't, for all those out there that are struggling, don't take that as an excuse to relapse, because it can be, only if you learn from it. But I am a multiple relapse, person. I've gone 10 months at a time before sober, or white knuckling, dry drunk. I've gone a year. It wasn't until I discovered, and I discovered Alcoholics Anonymous a long time ago, but it wasn't until I listened to everything that they say and did it instead of my own ideas that I finally got sober, and that was 4 years ago.
Oh, well, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Look, I guess this is a conversation, so I should say a little bit. So I would certainly not classify myself as an alcoholic, but I have certainly put down my share of drinks in my life. And so I started this social isolation series because I noticed, first off, I feel isolated. And it's weird because I have a wife, and sometimes we get along, but we certainly communicate with each other. And obviously live with each other. And I have some family that I can go and see, and it's warm. But somehow on the inside, I always feel like I'm different, like I don't fit in anywhere. Pretty much the outcast in a way, like you mentioned. And so I noticed that there are times when it's like after 2 or 3 days of that feeling, it's like I don't like that feeling. So let me go to the 7-Eleven and get some wine, or let me go to the liquor store and get some vodka, this kind of thing. It happens a little bit less now that I'm older. Maybe I'm aging out of that and I'm finding other ways to deal with that problem. But it's certainly the case, especially in my 20s and 30s, where it was crazy, man. It'd be like every 2 or 3 weeks, I would find myself, I couldn't resist it. I would have to go and get something to deal with that pain. The loneliness is still there, but maybe I'm finding other ways to medicate that loneliness. It's possible. There's this doctor. His name is Carl Hart, and he has this weird understanding. At first, I thought it was weird, but now I'm starting to get what he's saying. But he has this idea that drugs, in the main, are okay. He says that it's just a way of dealing with a situation, and it's the situation that's the problem. So let's say you've got a girl who needs to have a couple of drinks before she can go out with her other girlfriends to a club or something. Okay, that is actually in his mind okay. The problem is that the club situation never goes away. So if that girl is every weekend trying to go out with her girlfriends, now all of a sudden it becomes an addiction, because that situation never goes away. Or my loneliness, it never goes away, so I end up drinking. And I think that's an interesting way of looking at things. It might go to your ism idea. You're talking about there's the alcohol and then the ism.
Most definitely. I consider addiction, a blanket term for addiction could be self-medication. Mm-hmm. And there is absolutely, Carl Hart, you said
Carl
his name?
Hart, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He makes a good point, because not everybody who drinks to be comfortable at a party is an alcoholic. I think the human condition, brings forth a need to, supplement, to medicate.
Yeah, you gotta do something, yeah.
To be comfortable. And that's why alcohol stayed legal and other things became illegal, is because alcohol is a very effective social lubricant. I mean, I discovered it when I was because I'm uncomfortable too. You may not, I'm a highly practiced extrovert, but I'm very introverted. Mm-hmm, so right now, this is all an act. This is all my extrovert act. Because normally I'm chilling right in that chair, I'm watching The Office, I'm working on my, I'm introverted. I like dogs because, they don't take away energy from my, So my point is, when I discovered alcohol, I was comfortable being extroverted. I wanted to go out and that's the thing with the like your example of a girl that drinks before she goes to the club. I wouldn't go out anywhere unless there was drinking. Mm-hmm. And when I got sober, I had to learn how to socialize, not isolate. That's why in AA they have a term. It's called the 1,000-pound phone. Picking up the phone and calling another alcoholic. We call it the 1,000-pound phone because it's so hard to do that when you're in, there's not many people. I mean, you got your extroverts and your introverts, and I'm definitely on the introvert side, but there's people like my sister, they get their energy from socializing. And I used to be like that when I would drink, but with no, self-medication, I'm extremely introverted.
Yeah.
If I'm all day at work in a social environment, I would come home and I'd take a nap, because it drained all my energy. And that's a natural, thing. The only difference though, between an alcoholic and just a regular person that likes to, loosen up with a couple drinks is the alcoholic experiences a phenomenon of craving, is what they call it in the big book. The doctor referred to it as a phenomenon of craving. If I take a drink, I have an uncontrollable urge to just keep drinking. And that goes, for me, there's different types of alcoholics, but for me, that goes all the way to blackout and all the way to pass out and all the way, and it brings people to Skid Row and to death, and rock bottom is the only thing that stops the alcoholic as he progresses.
So we're going to talk quite a bit about AA. I want you to tell those who may be dealing with alcoholism about AA if they're a little hesitant. But first, tell us about your YouTube channel. Like, why'd you start it?
Sober James, and by the way, I called it Sober James reluctantly. I thought it was a bit pompous. I'm like, Sober James, but I called it that.
That's a great title, man. I actually like it, actually.
I mean, it's easy to remember, and it's recommended for a YouTube channel that you include your name and your niche. So like Sober James. And then also because I used to have a nickname and it was The Buzz. My friends called me The Buzz because I was always buzzing on some kind of substance. So I, symbolically have killed the buzz, and now I'm Sober James. So I started this YouTube channel, Sober James. I hurt my back at work over a year ago, and I've been home on workers' comp and stuff, just not able to work. So I discovered YouTube, telling my story as an alcoholic. I just got incredible feedback, and the 12th step of Alcoholics Anonymous is carrying the message to other alcoholics in need. So I decided to tell my story, and as it turns out, people can relate. People relate to, and I show pictures of when I was at the bottom of the barrel for the reason and the purpose of, like, I was there and now I'm here. Here's how I did it. Maybe it'll work for you or someone you love. So I started doing that. And then I discovered that it became not only a way to help people and not only something fun to do in a creative outlet, but I monetized and got AdSense, and I started actually gaining it's very minimal income. So I started like a Patreon page, and I have Sober James Patreon, where I offer, a more in-depth kind of relationship. So like, it's become this whole thing, and I'm having a blast with it, and it's over a year old, and I'm getting like pretty good at editing and stuff. I mean, in my eyes, I'm pretty good, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think there are some topics. First off, people come to YouTube because they want something. Either they want to fix the drain in their sink, something practical like that, or they want to know, deal with some personal issues like narcissism is a big thing on YouTube. The manosphere, like people, like guys who try to understand women, that's a big thing. But I also think addiction is something that people want to know about, and it's one of those things where you don't just go and just walk up and ask someone, hey, this is what's on my mind. Let's talk about whether I'm drinking too much. And so they can come to a person like you, and it's like you've tapped into something that people really need, and you do it quite well. For example, your site is a year old, so I've had mine for now 2.5 years. It started out as just for my students, but over the past year, I have started to try and make videos that people are interested in. But there's nothing that I can really tap into like that. Nothing that people would be like, wow, I can't wait to watch this. It's not that way.
I enjoyed watching you and what you're talking about and stuff. The thing that I am fortunate enough, I also have been like watching movies and studying. I have this certain like, I don't know, just a natural affinity for, I don't know, knowing how to edit or watch and like marketing. So I wanted to reach as many people as possible because addicts and alcoholics are, we isolate.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm sure you know this about addiction, but as addiction progresses, I mean, the addict isolates out of not really even a choice of their own. If they're extroverted, they will, they usually get banished by their social circles. They are pushed to isolation. So another reason that this YouTube channel is good for both of our niches is that somebody who's lonely and isolates isn't gonna like, they don't, and an addict, nobody, I didn't want to go to AA. Nobody in the room wanted to go to AA. You don't get to AA on a winning streak. So like YouTube is especially useful for topics like this because it's a shameful, it's not something that you like to broadcast or
Right,
go,
right, yeah.
AA is a very welcoming group, but there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of false impressions of it. People call it a cult or religious. It gets a lot of bad reputation. It's none of those things, and I have videos about that as well. But your addiction isn't going to allow you to get out of the house. You're not going to, if your addiction has its way, you're going to be sitting there drinking and dying until you're dead. And it's not going to want you to go out. It's going to talk to you in your own voice and tell you, you don't need to go to AA. You don't need friends. You don't need support. You just need to sit there and drink and use because you're sad and you're lonely. And that's the way it's going to be. So what I like about YouTube is it allows people to, have the anonymity behind their computer screen. And even my patrons and my chat, people don't. I had my first interview like this face to face on one of my live chats this weekend, where somebody actually got on the other side of the camera. But I mean, it's useful for your channel and mine actually, is that people get to investigate at their own comfort level. They get to watch us and not participate until they want to. And then maybe that's why I talk about AA a lot, because I didn't want to go to AA. I was in their position. I didn't want to get out of my house. I didn't want to talk to anybody, So I try to tell them, basically, I've been where you are. I didn't want to go either, but it has saved my life and it could save yours. And that's my main message, is like, you got to do the damn thing. So like, I made that my line, like my sign off line. You just got to do the damn thing, because until you do it, it doesn't get done. So I just try to, like, in every broadcast, to just try to say, look, I've been at the bottom, and I want to tell you that you can make it out. And I'm sure your viewers are the same way. And like I said, I enjoyed listening to everything. You have a very calm way of explaining, and you're definitely very educated. So you're a doctor and a professor?
Well, I'm both, but I'm not the doctor that gets paid money. So I'm a doctor, like a doctor at a university. So that means that I don't drive a Mercedes. I drive a Kia. So
yeah, that's
the difference. So, but yeah. But yeah, okay. So now, so you told me a little bit about your YouTube channel, and I think it's cool. And you got patrons. So what would a patron get when they subscribe? Is it subscribe or donate? I guess it's
pledge. They call it on Patreon. They call it a pledge. Now, alcoholics like myself, but a lot of alcoholics are, we call it, as jokingly, egomaniacs with an inferiority complex. So I like think the world of myself, but I'm shy, AF. And like, it's this dichotomy that just goes on and on. So when somebody mentioned Patreon, I'm like, I don't want to ask people to, pay or whatever. But then as this injury prevented me to go back to work, and YouTube is becoming this bigger and bigger thing, and I started getting thousands of subscribers, I'm like, all right, so maybe I can offer something. And I found out a couple of people just want their name in the credits of the video. They like seeing, and participating in the community. So I did that as a tier, and you can pledge $3 just to get your name in the credits and have instant messaging with me. Some people just want to be a part of, and so
Actually, that's a pretty good thing, right? Like, let's say you're alone, or you feel a little lonely, you feel a bit of an outcast, but you can be a part of this particular community on YouTube, and you're showing that with your pledge.
right. I have a live stream every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I have people that when I get on my computer, I can see 4 people waiting, and there's people that tell me now they look forward to it, and I've begun looking forward to it too, because I'm not a social butterfly. The weird thing is, it's hard to be. I'm sure you can relate to this. It's hard to be yourself like around big groups of people. For me, it's hard to be myself around big groups of people I don't know. But the weird thing about this live stream is I have been so vulnerable with like my weaknesses, my addiction and stuff, that it has created this like freedom to be my total self in front of like strangers across the internet. It's the weirdest,
that's interesting,
most beautiful thing. It's awesome because like I'm not always like that. My live streams, I'm totally and completely myself. And then if I go out in the public, sometimes I'm not like that. I'm kind of just, you know how it is. You it's like, I don't know what it is, but you just don't want to let yourself loose on the world or something.
I know exactly what you mean. So it's kind of a paradox. There's strength in vulnerability. So a lot of people think, and I think this too, and I tell my friends that I'm a human doing. And what I mean by that is I'm always trying to cover up something on the inside that I don't like by accomplishments, by trying to do something. So, I'm running 10 miles today. I run a lot. I'm signed up for this marathon, or, I'm going to the gym, like doing all these things. I wrote this textbook, or I did this writing. That's nice, but it doesn't necessarily mean you connect with people. You actually connect with people by showing your weaknesses. And through that, through that you gain strength to socialize. So, and I know that intellectually, but it's just so hard to open up to people.
I learned in addiction that intellect, because I'm not the dumbest person in the world. I know some things, but intellect doesn't work with such topics as addiction and isolation and loneliness, because we know these things have to be done logically, but until we start living, we can't think our way into good living. We have to live our way into good thinking.
I see. Yeah.
That's where it comes into. AA comes in on so many levels. They know that we're all, kind of isolated, so like going to an AA meeting sometimes is the only socialization I get, because I don't know how to socialize, at least at first in my sobriety, without a social lubricant like a substance, alcohol or drugs. So like AA knows that, and they're just like, it's okay, we've been there. And now I go disc golfing with AA people and everything. There's these play some poker, there's circles that you get friendships, and that's like the only people I socialize with are like recovering addicts and stuff. So I get exactly what you're saying. It's just hard to do,
It is very hard. It is very hard. Yeah.
And
so let's say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Too.
Yeah, you're right. It is a common problem. Yeah.
Some people are naturals at being extroverted and stuff, and then there's just other personalities that aren't. I think it has a lot to do with how we were raised too, like nurture, nature, our genetics and stuff like that. It's just the way it is. You have to be proactive, and I'm not always proactive. Like, I look at AA like being accountable. I have a home group, so I got to show up for that home group. That forces me to socialize when I don't even want to, because my natural inclination is to like not leave the house, like just isolate. I don't know why. Right. The way it is,
Well, let me you talked about AA a lot, so let me take the approach of someone who knows very little about AA, but they think that they might need to go. So suppose someone is considering and they have no idea what's going to happen. They just feel like they got to go. What's going to happen when they walk in the door?
what's going to happen when you walk in the door is what happens to every single person that you're walking into the room to see. It's what happened to them the first time that they went. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to not know what you're doing. You're going to be kind of scared, nervous, depending on your personality. But me, I happened to be pretty comfortable because I was at the last, I had been so humiliated by alcohol and my behavior that I really didn't care at that point what anybody, and I knew AA was welcoming. Like, I've been blessed with just knowing that AA was the way to go. But when you walk in, it's gonna be weird. The first meeting is weird. But the best thing to realize when you go to your first AA meeting is that every single person in that room has been to their first AA meeting before. They have literally been exactly where you are. And they understand that. There's no holier than thous. There's all different kinds of personalities. So you will encounter, just like every social group, there's going to be the know-it-alls, there's going to be the negatives, there's going to be the, there's all different kinds of personalities, and we like to say principles before personalities. You're there to get sober. You're not there to, fight with some guy that doesn't agree with your view on how to kennel your dog or whatever. So, when you go to your first AA meeting, you're there to get sober. You are most of us are at the end of our rope, and we need a solution no matter what. So that's what brings us there. You know all about the benefits of getting out of one's comfort zone. There's a saying, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And walking into an AA meeting is one of the most, it can be, it's not for everybody, but it can be very uncomfortable. For all the things, depending on the person, you might like it. There's people that love it. I watch people, newcomers, which are the most important person in the room is the newcomer, because that reminds me, after 4 years of being sober, seeing, like, say you walk in with like 2 different shoes on, and like you're literally just on the street, and I'm like, oh, that brings me right back to where I was. And the newcomer, helping that newcomer is going to help me, because it enriches my like spiritual self. I used to be, I would lie, cheat, and steal in my addiction. Now I help people, and it makes me a better human being. So a newcomer, this person that needs to go to AA and they don't know what to expect welcoming arms and understanding to the highest degree. There's no better understanding than someone who has experienced what you have experienced. And especially if that's a trauma of some sort, I'm sure you know that like trauma unites people. If you got 2 people in a foxhole at war, those guys could have been, enemies back at the barracks, but if they're being shot at, they're now like best friends, So like in the rooms of AA, you'll find various personalities, but you'll quickly learn like who's there to get sober and who's there for other agendas and stuff. And a lot of the things that keep people away from AA meetings is 13-stepping. Women think they're going to get hit on and taken advantage of. And I tell them, like I tell anybody else, or men, people think their addiction will tell them, don't go to AA because this is what happens. And there's rumors and stuff. AA at its whole has existed since 1939. And the very core principle of AA is to stay sober and help others achieve sobriety. Period. End of story. There's no money to be made. If you go to AA, which is easy, you can look up Meeting Guide app to download for Android or Apple. For your phone, it's Meeting Guide app. So you can find a meeting. You don't have to go there and pay any money. You don't even have to introduce yourself as an alcoholic. You're not going to lose anything. If you're wondering if you have a drinking problem, alcoholics, you don't even have to go there and say, I'm going to go here for the rest of my life. You just go there because you don't know what else to do, and need help. If you have a desire to stop drinking, that's the only requirement for AA, the desire to stop drinking. NA is the desire to stop using, but, so to answer your question, a person that is wondering about AA, it's a very caring, wholesome environment. it's just people that were where you are that needed to stop drinking. And you can find someone who is very, very similar to your situation, and then you can make that person your sponsor. And all I do with my sponsor is, you used to be like me when I was drinking. You're 14 years sober. Just tell me how you did it, and I'm going to do exactly that, because my ideas don't work. Basically, AA is like, if you're at the end of your rope and your ideas aren't working anymore, you take the ideas of AA, because they've been getting sober for 100 years. That's all AA is, really.
Okay. Is it, I guess a question would be, because I think people have seen in some show, and they're always making jokes about it, which is probably unfortunate, an AA meeting on television, and they're in a circle, and then people reveal their stories or things that it's almost like a therapeutic type situation. Is it like that?
It's group, yeah. It's a group therapy. It's volunteer. You can enter and leave whenever you want. There's no bosses. There's a lot of movies and stuff about, there's comical, like in Half Baked, where he goes into a group and he like claims he's addicted to marijuana, and everybody starts bashing on him because, there's comedies like that. Those are dangerous, but if you understand it. And then there's movies like, there's a movie on Amazon right now called Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. It's got Jonah Hill,
I saw this. Yes.
Joaquin Phoenix. That's a good interpretation of AA. Very, very accurate to what AA stands for. Shameless, the show on the,
HBO, isn't it? Oh, Showtime.
Yeah, like Lip Gallagher is an alcoholic, and he started in the later seasons going to AA, and it stayed true to what AA is. AA is just alcoholics helping other alcoholics, and everybody stays sober. And that's all AA is.
All right.
And if you go to rehab, you can go to an inpatient rehab, and some people say rehab is just $60,000 for a big book. So it's $60,000. Going to rehab, all they're going to do is put you through AA meetings, because it's worked for 100 years. The 12th step is, the first step is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives have become unmanageable. And then the rest of the steps help you deal with life after that, because alcohol is only mentioned in the first step, and that's it. The rest of them are how to deal with the loneliness and isolation. One of the steps is making amends to those we have harmed, and that helps you come out of your isolating, lonely shell.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. You're admitting you're
worthy. Because we isolate, at a core level, probably because we don't feel like we're worthy of society, or we don't fit in. Or what AA does is teach you how to be an esteemable person by doing good for nothing. It takes a good for nothing, and it has them do good for nothing. We just help others, and then we start to, before you know it, you start to the 9th step promises actually mention, there's promises we read at different groups, and one of them is your fear of people and economic insecurity will vanish, will disappear. And that's one of the promises of following the program of AA, because they know that stopping drinking is the first and most important step. But after that, you got to learn how to live without drinking, and that involves getting out, because we can't stay in our holes all day, every day, And when I go disc golfing with my sponsor, he'll thank me. He'll be like, "Thanks for getting me out of the house," because it's unhealthy, but humans in this day and age, isolate.
I get that totally. This idea of explaining or explain to others the things that you've done bad, like opening up. What's the step again? Tell me how that.
Character defects. The personal inventory is step 4. First step, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. That's the most important step by far. You're powerless over alcohol. You cannot drink. If you're an alcoholic, you cannot drink. Period. End of story. After you take that drink. But then the rest of the steps are believing in a power greater than yourself. That for me is AA. I happen to be agnostic. That's not atheist. I just
don't know.
Not really sure. Whatever. But
no. You mentioned something about talking to others about the things that. Okay.
And step 4 is taking a personal inventory, a fearless personal and honest and fearless personal inventory of yourself. That's saying, okay, I isolate, I judge people. I'm talking about the ugly, stuff nobody wants to admit. We're talking honest and fearless, and you write it down. Then the fifth and sixth step, you're telling it to another person. You admit it to yourself, and you tell it to God. So when AA was created, God was there, but God can be an acronym for group of drunks, good orderly direction. God the need for a God in the sky took a back seat to sobriety, and the only words that have changed in the big book since 1939 was the word God to God of your understanding, because they realized that believing in a God of Christianity or whatever wasn't as important as believing in something greater than yourself. So my point is, you tell all of these character defects to, in this case, my sponsor, to yourself, to God, and then the next step is humbly ask God or your higher power, the universe, or AA to remove your character defects. They don't vanish like a clean slate, but this allows you to work on them and be aware of your character defects. And now that they're out in the open, you've told them to somebody, this probably and theoretically has the effect of half of your tendency to isolate has just vanished, because you're out in the open now. You're only as sick as your secrets, so you might as well. So
yeah, that's actually, I mean, it's kind of, for me to say that it's genius is kind of stupid for something that's been around for so long. Like, you genius. Say it's a genius. Okay, fine. Yeah, now we know it's genius. But
Bill and Dr. Bob, those were the two guys in 1939 that got together and created these steps. And trust me, I call it genius all the time. We marvel at, like, how in the world did they come up with 12 perfect things for life? And people use 12 steps in everything, from quitting nicotine to sex addiction to everything. You just replace the word alcohol in the first step with sex, nicotine, drugs, and that's it. But it's literally a blueprint for life, because after those steps, step 8 and 9, or 7, 8, and 9, is you make a list of people you have harmed, and resentments, fears, you write them all down. And then you say, hey, Mom, sorry I was stealing your cigarette. You go back, you make amends. And that doesn't mean just say, I'm sorry. That means you make amends. I have paid people chunks of money back that I have cost them. You make a living amends to my sister. I was never able to be around her kids, and I wasn't a good uncle. So now I'm living a living amends by being a good person. So that takes us out of our shell and gets us.
Yes, it does.
It makes us, want to be around people. Our fear of people and insecurity has dissolved. So now we can, live. And if we don't do these steps, we will withdraw back into isolation and then self-medicating, and you will drink. And when I discovered that the hard way over and over again. I just went back to the bottle. And then I said, I was so desperate, because my God, G-O-D, is a gift of desperation. I was granted the gift of desperation. I was so desperate because I just kept getting drunk, arrested, hurt, almost dead. And I finally said, all right, AA, I will do anything and everything you tell me to do, because your ideas are obviously better than mine. I even pray. I say the Our Father, the Serenity Prayer, because I believe in the power of belief. I believe the power of words. I believe in the philosophies of my higher power, which is AA. And ever since I started doing that, I've been sober and relatively happy. I still go through bad days and this and that, but I go to AA or I call my sponsor. How do you do this? How do you deal with this? And it works.
Yeah, to me, it's something where, I imagine that Dr. Bob he was a medical doctor, but probably not a psychiatrist, I guess. I don't know. But the reason why I think it's genius is I think a lot of people struggle with the distance between their private self and their public self. And so when you've got a big difference between who you show to the public and what's actually going on in your mind. It doesn't have to be real, just in your mind. You think you're a certain way. Or it could be real things going on in your home. But if there's a difference there, then that's a problem. And the wider that difference, the more anxiety, the more shame, the more fear, and then the more likely to drink. So by doing all this stuff, by doing all that stuff, you're bringing your true self closer to your public self, and you're more relaxed around people, and you're not isolating yourself. I mean, it's really it's a, you know, obviously it's been around for a while, so this is the reason. But I guess someone who doesn't know much about AA, I know a little bit, but not as much as you or others who have gone through the steps. Then for me, it's like, oh, I see how this works.
Oh, it's fascinating. I look at it. I'm a scientist at heart. But there's a spiritual angle to the 12 steps as well. Handing your will over to your higher power. Some people call it God. Giving your will, being your spiritual awareness is heightened by doing good things for other people. I don't know. I have marveled, but I'm like scientific at heart, so I've like analyzed the crap out of it, and I still don't know how some of the things work, and I had to come to grips with the fact that I don't have to understand how it works. It works. It has saved my life. I don't have to be able to like put it in a nutshell, but I'm the same as you. It is like fascinating how it's fascinating how they do it, because we sit in meetings and we're just like, I've often said, like, man, if like non-alcoholic people got to come to meetings like this, like there wouldn't be so many assholes on the highway and like in the
right
because we're all about like making amends, doing the next right thing. These are human traits. These aren't just for the addict. These are just how to be a good person. So like, I'm with you. I totally, and the book is another. If you have a chance to read the big book, The Doctor's Opinion is in the beginning, and he puts it in a way that you're just like, wow. I marvel all the time. It was written in 1939, and it's one of the greatest reads I've ever read, like to this day.
All right, well, let's bring it to, I think we've kind of gone through most of these questions, except the last one, which is about social media. So I have this idea that I've been playing with. For those, the viewers who don't know, so I'm a professor of, I call myself a digital sociologist. So a lot of my research has to do with Twitter and cybercrime mainly. And so the interest in social isolation and loneliness is a personal one. So if you go to my channel, you'll see conversations about cybercrime. You'll see conversations about sex work, sex trafficking, all kind of stuff. But because I'm interested in social media, it seems to me that it's a kind of a substitute for real social interaction, in that people may think, all right, I'm lonely, I'm isolated, but, I can get on Facebook and I can, like a bunch of things, slide into people's DMs, this type of thing, and that equals socializing. And I think that might be a bit of a mistake. But I'm speaking to a YouTuber who's got patrons and people who pledge, and so I want to get your opinions on this. I mean, is it helping loneliness, hurting loneliness?
I do have opinions about this. It's just like, in my opinion, Facebook, just like your guy said when referring to alcohol, it can be a useful tool to those who do not have a tendency to abuse it and take it to the limit. Facebook can be a useful networking tool. Alcohol can be a useful social lubricant, but there are those who take advantage of it. Like, I could isolate and just do nothing but Facebook and not use responsibly. YouTube, same thing. I like to encourage my viewers all the time. I'm posting that meeting guide app. I'm telling the story of how I got out of my shell and it saved my life. So I like to use it as a tool, but it can be super destructive to one's social life, because there are those who hide behind the screen and do nothing but, and I mean, you can see it anywhere you go. People are on their phones, and family dinners are replaced by families on their phone. And this is a subject that's very interesting, and it's one of those that it's up to the individual to control. Your life is your life as an individual. So you can be all about Facebook and you can create identities online and you can get wrapped up in it, but you're going to experience the negative consequences. Same as me or any addict, that it, the definition of addiction is continuing compulsive behavior while regardless of negative consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So if this person is on Facebook, or even let's take a patron of mine, if all they do is stay behind the screen and do my live chats and Patreon, and they become part of the Sober James community, and that's all that they do, that is I highly discourage that. Like, if that's all that they do, that is going to mess up their mental health and their well-being. AA meetings take that, because there's no such thing as people encourage. They want to know if I'll start online AA meetings and stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm trying to find a way where there can be like a multi-camera kind of thing, but there's still no substitute for a social gathering in the flesh.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Human touch, human compassion. I mean, we are classified, I guess, as primates or whatever, whether or not you subscribe to that. But if you just look at us as a species, we're just like any other social species. We're not, like a snake is not a social species, a human is. So as far as all that, we are, kind of sealing our own fate, but it's up to the intelligence and the, social awareness of the individual to say, you know what, I don't want to. One of my users the other day just said that they're getting off social media, and you'll hear this often, I'm sure, among your students, is like they're on a social media strike and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good to experiment with on an individual basis. It's good to experiment with how to find a balance in this digital world between health and all that. That's why I force myself to get out of the house and go to meetings. I force myself to go disc golf and talk, like even and you can use it as a beneficial thing. Like you and I would have not met at all.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or seen what each other looked like if it wasn't for. So you just like, I can't use alcohol as a tool because I have what some people call an allergy. If I take it in my body, I experience a phenomenon of craving and then negative consequences. So I can't use alcohol. If someone experiences negative consequences and a lack of self-control with Facebook or Instagram, it's up to the individual, and even their parents or their loved ones cannot say, you're doing that too much, you need to stop. When it comes time for behavior traits and behavioral disorders, the irony of it all is that we have to address it ourselves. So to answer your question, it can be a negative impact, and it is a negative impact on society. However, it can also be an asset to an individual's life. Like, to communicate with your family that lives 500 miles away, that's priceless. But it's all about a personal choice, which is the essence of my channel, or any recovering addict channel, is like the individual is in charge of their own recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer what you're saying is it's up to us whether we abuse this social media thing or not. I know that Facebook is destructive to me, because I get on my phone to, I don't know, let's just pick the most wholesome task that one could think of, like call my grandmother and talk about the Bible. I'll get on my phone to do that, and all of a sudden 5 minutes have passed and I'm scrolling through memes on Facebook. That's because the same people who engineered Vegas slot machines were hired to engineer notifications and stuff like that on social media. Money makes the world go round, and Facebook is engineered to capture us for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to the individual. Same as I don't like to watch too many commercials. Bad self-esteem is good for business. So they want me to feel bad about myself. They want me to want that Ferrari or that Corona or that anything, so I try to stay away from commercials. And the same with social media. It's destructive, but a healthy person, if you're self-aware, can take it and leave it. But it's very addictive and destructive. And I would say a good percentage of society is negatively affected by it.
Yeah, I think, it's a good complement to socializing, but it's not a substitute for it. And I guess a person of my age, I'm in my 40s, so I'm a bit older than you. I grew up in a time where there was no social media, so I don't get that craving to be on it that much. But I think young people may have a bit more of a problem than I do. So yeah, I think that may contribute to loneliness. The thing about loneliness is people don't know how to identify it. So they don't realize that odd feeling they have when they're sitting alone at home is actually them feeling lonely. It's just not something we talk about. And so they get on there. It's like it's like a sugar. So you're hungry, and if you have some a lollipop or something. Do people still eat lollipops? I don't know, but something sugary. It doesn't fill you. It just goes right through you, and so you think that you're actually quenching or satiating yourself, and you're not. And the same thing goes for social media.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening, and so they're still lonely.
There's
because
no
they're not
value.
getting a real. Yeah.
It's pleasure versus accomplishment.
Something like that. You're just not getting a good square meal. You're getting you're not getting what you really need, and I think that's what's happening. But I'm just playing with that idea. I don't know if that's true or not. Look, man, you went through all the questions that I had for you. It was a good conversation. We had a nice back and forth, and just as I thought it would be. You're very informative, and the thing about that part about AA is really good, man, because there are people who are watching this or who will watch it. More on your end, you get more viewers than I do, but the people who come to my channel, they'll see it, and especially if they're coming for the social isolation part. And then they'll say, oh, you know what, maybe I should walk into that AA meeting and sit down and find out what it's all about.
On that tip, there are two types. Well, there's many types, but essentially there's open meetings and closed meetings.
Okay.
You can find all this on aa.org for anybody looking out for that information. But an open meeting means that non-alcoholics can go, welcome. Closed is, it's suggested that alcoholics come. There's no rules, really. You're not going to get exiled, but closed meetings is preferred if you're an alcoholic wanting to stop drinking. Open meetings are anybody and everybody. So even if you find like you're just wondering, or anybody can go to an open meeting, and you can find that information on aa.org or meeting guide.
Or if they download the app, they'll see it on the app. It'll say
meeting guide app. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
But I recommend to non-alcoholic people all the time. And there's Al-Anon. Al-Anon works with the 12 steps. This is valuable stuff. Even if you I don't know if you've ever seen Fight Club. Remember the movie Fight Club?
I do remember the movie. But first, before you keep going, what is Al-Anon?
Al-Anon is for loved ones and family members of alcoholics and addicts. So the alcohol and addiction affects everybody around the addict. So there's Al-Anon is a organization much like AA. It's basically AA for the family members and loved ones of the alcoholic.
Okay.
Because it's tough. Alcoholism is tough. It affects everybody around the addict. Mm-hmm. But in Fight Club, there was a character there was two of them, Edward Norton and that one girl. They would go to 12-step meetings just to get out of the house. Like that's all that they would do. Even though they weren't addicted to, crack, they would go to like Cracks Anonymous. But that's like a really good idea, because these are social groups. So I totally suggest just venturing out to an AA meeting. It's very welcoming. No.
All right. I think that's good advice, man. Even Al-Anon. So, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know about that. Well, do you have any other, before we sign off, or at least start recording, do you have anything else you want to add?
Just thanks for, thanks for reaching out to me. I
Thank
plan
you,
on
man.
watching more of your channel, and I wish you luck with it. But thanks. This has been a very stimulating social encounter.
Yes, it has been. All right. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, take it easy. I'll talk to you again.